Hello, everyone. This is the Revolutionary Think Tank podcast. If this is your first time here, this is a podcast about political commentary, protest music, and revolutionary thinking. My name is 4AS, and this is my co-host, Mr. E. So, Mr. E, how are you going today?
I am very well, 4IS. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. And again, another interesting topic.
I would say so, yes, I
Yeah, you
would.
suggested this one.
Yes.
You've got a very interesting premise for this one. What do
Yeah.
you think makes Tony Robbins a socialist?
Look, it's a catchy kind of topic, especially when you go after someone like Tony Robbins. He's a heavyweight in the self-help field.
Yeah.
And like I've been doing like kind of a little bit of, I guess you would say, research into the whole self-help space. Like it's a big kind of thing in modern society.
Mm.
It has its roots going back like quite a while. Like, people in kind of ancient times were, writing self-help kind of books and explorations and all that sort of stuff. But I think in the modern age, especially under capitalism, as we have such kind of a materialist society, there has kind of been this kind of development of self-help as more of an industry, and like, obviously a commodity, something that's very easily bought and sold. And because of that, I was kind of interested in it and drawn to it. And it's also come about as like from discussions that I've had with Friendly Geordies. Like I was on his podcast, a couple of months ago and stuff like that. And like I know he's a bit of a self-help guy. And so kind of delved into a little bit of that area. And like what I have found when it comes to kind of the core tenets of like self-help, and especially a lot of this, the self-help gurus and like old mate Tony Robbins over here, is that very, very surprisingly, there are strong connections in the self-help space with like the core values and ideas of like socialism or social libertarian ideology at its core. Like I don't mean like specific types of socialism like, Leninism or Stalinism or something like that, or even Marxism. I mean like kind of socialism generally, the general aims of socialism. And actually the more that you kind of dig deeper into it, like the more surprising the connections become. And like you kind of really have to start thinking like to yourself, like, are they almost the same thing in a way? Like the only real area of divergence, or I would say limitation, when it comes to self-help, and that's in the name, it's limited in like to the individual, right? So like the same kind of improvement and like qualitative differences that people in the self-help space look for are the exact same type of qualitative changes and improvements that socialists look for. They're just doing it on a humanity-wide scale, where your self-help guru is just applying the same logic to the individual. So like it just becomes crazy and uncanny, some of the links, once you start delving into it.
Okay, well, before we delve into it, because I don't know whether the listeners or the viewers are going to be similar to me, but at least prima facie, when I think of Tony Robbins, I think him being, the poster boy of Western culture, the poster boy of individualism, and his seminars being a pretty penny, and and that sort of thing. So, is the premise behind your thinking, is it that his self-help logic, it's based in the idea of socialism? Is that the underlying premise?
Well, like I would say that the two, as like two forms of ideology, are incredibly concurrent with one another, or they parallel one another.
Right.
Very, very similarly. But like I said, like the area of divergence that splits them is that like this form of logic you apply to the individual to get the end game kind of thing, but whereas like the socialists, you apply it to society to get to your end game. But like the values that they both carry to get there are so in sync with one another it's almost scary sometimes. And like, yes, it's really weird going to someone like, starting with someone like Tony Robbins. It's paradoxical, which is why I love it, right? Because it's just like, it just doesn't make sense, and you're just like, oh my god. Because like Tony Robbins, for instance, like you mentioned, like if you want to go to one of his kind of financial mastery like sessions, or like grow your business, like, or whatever it is that he does, like they're like $10,000 a ticket to go to these events and stuff like that. So it's like, it's not aimed at like average people, but like it is in a way, because like the average person who's interested in that stuff will try and scrounge together whatever they need to get to a Tony Robbins event, because it's going to be a life-changing phenomenon, like, kind of thing.
Mm.
So like it's not easily accessible to the average person, but like it's a key indicator if you want to be successful, if you can get to one of these events. So it's like a fetishized item in the capitalist kind of world. But like Tony Robbins in himself, like, he is kind of the antithesis of socialism in a way. Like, the man is worth $600 million or more, thereabouts. So like, when it comes to kind of, evil capitalists slash like big business owners or whatever, the owners of capital and all that sort of stuff, like, he's up there. He's pretty high up in the ranks. And like all of the people that he affiliates with and associates with are like, the biggest capitalists on earth. Like, he's going around talking to like, like heads of like Google, and heads of like the biggest companies in the
Mm.
world, like heads of state, like the biggest sporting stars and phenomenons in their field. He goes around talking to them and just, rubbing shoulders with them on a daily basis. So like, he's up there with the 1%. And like, it's more than that though. Like, it's not just like he's part of their club. Like, they turn to him. So the biggest capitalists on earth turn to him when they want to learn more about their game, and like, he helps them but kind of better what they're doing to a certain extent. And like, it's like, just in that, like, in itself, there's like kind of a weird correlation straight away to Karl Marx, because like Karl Marx spent, like, Tony Robbins has spent his life basically understanding capitalism, right? In order to be able to help all of these people with their like money making kind of ambitions, or their just like their general success ambitions. In order to be successful in a overarchingly capitalist world, you kind of have to understand how capitalism works at a very basic level, and kind of more than that, as intricately as you can get it. And so, like, he has, I believe, a profound understanding of capitalism. He wouldn't call it that. He would just say that it's kind of just common, or this general knowledge that he's built up of years of like talking to the right people and understanding things. But like, fundamentally, he's just figured out how capitalism works from his own kind of frame of mind. Now, like I said before, Karl Marx did the exact same thing. He spent his life figuring out how capitalism works. And like,
Mm.
so Tony Robbins might rub shoulders with the biggest capitalists on earth kind of thing. And that's how he understands the game. And improves it for other people trying to get in on that game too. But Karl Marx kind of did the same thing in a way. Like, when he wrote Capital, volumes 1, 2, and 3, some of the critique that he got from leftists was kind of like, well, you've kind of written the book on like how capitalism works. And it wasn't just kind of, revolutionaries and socialists and stuff that were reading this stuff. There was capitalists too, and they were like, oh, of course, it's all so clear. Why didn't I think of that? And like, he gave them the book, the playbook, to kind of advance their capitalist desires in a way, and learn how to do their industry better, because for the first time someone had really fundamentally laid out like, okay, well, it all revolves around kind of surplus value, and like, how do you create surplus value? You can
Mm.
do it this way. You can exploit your workers harder. You can increase the rate of exploitation. You can like decrease wages. You can make them work longer hours, or you can invest in more machinery to get more products out of them, and all this sort of stuff. Like, some of these things were for a long time just like intuition, you want to say. But like, he kind of structured it and gave people a formula about like how to
Mm.
be a better capitalist. And so like right there, the two of them are kind of like, they're separate, like I was saying before, but they're sitting up there like right on the same level. These are two people that have, for their own intents and purposes, understood profoundly and analyzed and prescribed what it is to be a capitalist and what you have to do to make it.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get a picture here. I guess the picture that you're trying to create is of the period that these two men come from.
Mm.
You have your Karl Marx that was able to understand capitalism and able to analyze it.
Mm.
And his end result was, the Communist Manifesto and the general idea of workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. So there's that idea. But then you have your Tony Robbins, who instead goes in the complete opposite direction, and instead of him speaking to working people, he goes, "Oh, well, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk's types, and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. This is how you master money, and this is how you do your personal development." So, what is this? Just a left and right game,
Well, like,
or
no, like in the sense, because like Tony Robbins definitely appeals to the working class. I think he's actually the most of his support would come from the working class. I was just saying before that he rubs shoulders with the biggest capitalists on earth. And don't get me wrong, they come to him for advice and stuff like that.
right?
And like let's think of them more as just successful people. And he teaches them how to be better as successful people. So like they're not shy from coming to him for like, tips and tricks and all that sort of stuff. Like when
Right.
like the biggest people in the stock exchange who, can make money while economies are crashing and all that sort of stuff, when they go down themselves and have a breakdown or a slump, they turn to him and say, give us some tips and tricks. When like someone like, I don't know, for example, Tiger Woods or something, he's having a bad day on the golf course, like, he calls up Tony Robbins and asks him to get in his mind so he can start, performing better. So like these are already successful people and he can, rub off some of his wisdom onto them. But like for a large part, Tony does speak to working class people because he's kind of trying to draw them in and say, you can be better, you can improve on yourself and be successful. You got to do all these things. And like, so like his angle is like, don't get me wrong, it's very appealing to the working class. And I think he gets a lot of his business feeding off those people that have like large scale aspirations. But the point of difference is these large scale aspirations are working within the existing system, whereas Marx was analyzing capital in order to obviously get an understanding of it, but an understanding of it in order to overcome it. So like there is nothing kind of there's no aspirational nature in Tony Robbins, which is just like, all right, this is the system and like, it's got its flaws, but like, this is how you kind of work with what you got to be successful. Whereas Marx is like, this is the system, it's got its flaws, and this is how we will overcome it. This is how we will overthrow the contradictions of capital, the problems, the social issues that it breeds and spreads throughout the world. Like Tony is fully, I think, acknowledging of a lot of these issues, especially like the materialistic nature of our society and the effect that has on our psychology, our happiness, our well-being, all that sort of stuff. But like he doesn't go there in terms of trying to add some type of resolution to that or like trying to fix that. He's just saying, let's acknowledge what these things are and, knowledge will make you powerful and so you can play the game better. But like Marx was not about like playing the game better. He was about like rewriting the rule book and like throwing it out like completely so we could move beyond. Tony doesn't move beyond the existing realm kind of thing and like society. He just tells the individual how to elevate themselves beyond kind of the rest of like the majority of people and step your game up and all that sort of stuff. Marxists or socialists would want to step the game up in the sense of like leave everything behind. There's better things to do. So like, but they both appeal to the working class, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, because essentially what you're saying is the difference between your Karl Marx and your Tony Robbins is one is saying this is how you best work with the rules within the game, and uh, Karl Marx was no, let's throw this rule book out and let's create a new system.
Yeah,
Basically.
yeah. He was all for that. And like he was no utopian either, Marx, right? So he
Yes.
wasn't just like, oh, let's create a new society. It's going to be all like bells and whistles and everyone's going to be happy. Like it was a progressive thing. Like you have to like small wins here and there, step by step, we'll get over it. And this is kind of the map to that. And like I think there is a lot of kind of similarities with like what Tony Robbins would say, or self-help gurus say, like, Rome's not built in a day. You've got to progressively improve on yourself in order to make change in your life and all that sort of stuff. So they both share this kind of understanding of like this pattern of growth and development, and like you got to start somewhere and work towards it. Like it's just, again, they move in separate trajectories because it's applied either individually or collectively, and like that's kind of where they diverge. There's no collectivism in self-help. There's none of that. It's
Yes.
self-help. And like the only collectivism that you could really draw out of self-help is like there is this kind of fundamental understanding that like kind of flows through the self-help scene, that like, look, you can kind of make it and be successful, and like whatever you measure that by, like having millions of dollars or like owning hundreds of businesses or having 5 Lamborghinis in your garage, like whatever your measure of success is. But at the end of the day, like the only fulfillment that you get in life is like things that are beyond the material world. So like giving back to your community, giving back to society, helping your neighbors, helping your community. So like there's this really strong understanding in self-help that like you do have to transcend beyond the individual. Like all this success stuff is great as long as you've got a purpose that is higher than yourself. It can't just be about an individual focus, which is like stunning when you think about it, right?
Right. Okay. I think now we're getting somewhere. So, you're saying in say for example, a typical Tony Robbins seminar, or at
Mm,
least his material that he does.
mm.
He's like, oh, this is how you be better. This is how you get your dreams.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
materialism. However,
Mm.
remember, guys, you got to give back to your community.
Yeah. Like this is how you
Right.
get fulfillment, is like you have to have a higher purpose. There has to be a wrong that you want to right in the world. And like if you stick to that, like that value, that mission, right? And you just make it your everything, you will become so successful in that area because you've dedicated your life to it that people will just want to throw money at you, they want to support you, and you'll just become successful at it because you've dedicated your life to this purpose. But like if your sole purpose though is just to be rich or just to be successful, you won't end up being any happier. You might have like a bigger house and nicer cars to drive around in and a super yacht and all that sort of stuff, but you won't have fulfillment. Fulfillment comes from when you get to that higher purpose and like you are able to contribute to society. So like they kind of frame it in like you can be as successful as you want, but like your success should be then kind of for the purpose of giving back somehow to society. So like let's say you get really rich for some reason, you're really good at what you do, but like you might have wanted to get rich because you wanted to help like bring your family with you out of poverty or bring your community back with you out of poverty, like like a LeBron James kind of thing, who's like made like hundreds of millions of dollars in his sponsorships and his like sporting achievements, and now he's trying to create high schools and like revolutionize the schooling system in America. There's like no fulfillment in just accumulating wealth and things. It only is once you give back and you can use your success for another purpose and like a higher power, higher purpose, all that sort of stuff. That's where you get the fulfillment. And that is incredibly socialist and collectivist in its aims, because like socialists like kind of just innately understand and acknowledge the fact that like all of the struggle is not for struggle's sake. You don't just like fight against the machine because you want to win or you want to, guillotine some rich people. Like, don't get me wrong, that sort of stuff is very satisfying, I'm sure, but like it doesn't give you fulfillment. The fulfillment you get from changing society for the majority of people as opposed to the few is that like everyone at the end of the day will be better for that. Like everyone's living standards will rise, everyone's self-satisfaction and well-being will rise. And so there's an innate sense of satisfaction and fulfillment in striving to that. But like socialists get that kind of from the get-go, whereas someone who follows self-help has to develop into that, and then once they get to a level where they can give back, then hopefully they do that, and then they can feel fulfilled from like what it is that they're doing. So like they share these core values, these commonalities, if you will, but like they're just warped, and they're like kind of standing apart from one another. But like at the end of the day, they're exactly the same thing. If you ask me, they're both looking for a level of fulfillment, and like, you know, one just does that at the start and the other kind of gets there over time. So like that's kind of the path where you get to with self-help. You got to kind of recognize at the end of the day that you have to do something that's greater than yourself. But like socialism has always kind of been greater than the self.
Yeah.
It's social. That's what it is, and it's a recognition of that. And so like we've talked about like financial mastery now. So like financial mastery for a lot of self-help gurus is kind of like this idea that like, without saying it, they never use the evil C word, but like you live in a capitalist system, right? And so like Marx kind of understood like the power of the circulation of capital. That's what capitalism is, like fundamentally. Like, don't get me wrong, there's the political form, there's the economic form, all that sort of stuff, and the social, you know, all the social issues that come with it. But like really, capitalism is about the circulation of money and the power of that circulation. And what does circulating money do? It accumulates in certain areas. So it gets created and amassed, and like certain people take it and like bank on it and manipulate it to their own ends. And that's what kind of that's the power of money. And so like that's what that's what self-help gurus are all about. They're like, you've got to understand finances. You've got to understand how money works. It's the lifeblood of our society. So if you don't have a good understanding of how to work your finances, like, don't bother. Like, you don't know how to like deal with money, go find out. There's enough books to read out there. There's enough courses to go on. You've got like social media, you've got YouTube, you've got the internet, like whatever it is, you can find out how money works, and you should have an understanding of that if you want to play the game in this day and age, because you can't survive in this world without money. And they both like self-help gurus and socialists like have this inbuilt into them. Socialism, like since I would say the time of Marx, and you know, before that, they were very understanding of like the economics of the world, what makes the world go round, and it's money. And like you have to kind of understand that in order to fight against it. Like back in the time of like Marx and stuff like that, it was called, these people weren't just philosophers or economists and stuff like that, they were called political economists. Like you couldn't separate economics and politics. They were one of the same. Now we live in this kind of warped reality where, oh, you know, economics is economics and politics is politics, but like, you know, they're inextricable, those two. You can't separate them.
Well, we're bringing up an old conversation with all the stuff we've discussed with Mariana Mazzucato, but yeah, I kind of agree with what you're saying that.
Yeah, so like there's a massive emphasis on financial mastery. And so like, you know, in self-help, financial mastery is kind of like, again, understanding how money works for your own ends. But like in socialism, it's understanding the power of capital, how the system works, how everything feeds into each other, so you can struggle against the system. And like someone like Tony Robbins promotes financial mastery to struggle against the system as well. Like it's not about kind of like just knowing how it works. It's like you want to know how it works so you can fight against the system and win. But like, and socialists kind of use their understanding of, you know, capitalism and the circulation of capital, yes, to fight against the system and win. Different aims. Again, that's where the separation comes in. But again, these are just commonalities. They share these two principles, which is like, you want to exist in this world, you want to fight against this world, got to understand capital and its circulation, which is it's a profound realization when you think about it. These two things which you just never align with one another are coming together on another very strong issue or like concept.
Well, really, the concept of understanding in Das Kapital of money converting into commodities, converting into money, is no different from uh, a self-help guru turning to you and saying, "This is how you do a business well and get rich quick."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. These are the fundamentals of business. Like Friendly Geordies was talking to me the other day about like this kind of like this theme that was picked up in some of the self-help stuff that he's involved in, which is like this idea, right? That like once you reach a certain level in your business, like what you've got to start doing, right, is you've got to start delegating functions out, right, to certain people. You've got to understand that like you've got to focus on what you're good at, and you get a team of people to kind of do all of the other stuff that you shouldn't be wasting your time on, because time is money and all that sort of stuff. But you've got to kind of get these people to do all the heavy lifting, and like produce the value that you shouldn't be wasting your time on. So like if you can start to delegate out, that's where you start to become really successful as a business, and you start to explode in your growth. And that is like, that's socialism 101, is that like capitalist owns the means of production and hires workers to make all the value, and then they spend all their time improving their business and they reap all the profits. Like this stuff is uncanny. That's what they're teaching people, is like you need to basically have a group of people that you pay a wage and exploit them for their productive labor, and then you can continue just doing what you need to focus on to make your business bigger and better. Like,
yeah, so the end product, the end product is different based on what you're focusing on.
yeah, you
Like,
focus on this as like this is good for your
yeah,
business, and like socialists say, oh, okay, this is good for the capitalist and bad for the worker kind of thing. But like they're both describing the exact same phenomenon, like to a T, to a T. And like it's just like Marx was describing this 150, 200 years ago. And self-help gurus are just analyzing this because this is just how good business operates. But like, it's like they've read capitalism, Das Kapital, and were kind of like half switched on while they were reading it, and didn't realize that this was coming from some depraved commie, like kind of thing.
right.
Like, if you just wrote somebody else's name on the front of Das Kapital, they'd be like, my God, this is genius. Why didn't I think of this? So like,
Well, actually,
that's a core tenet. Sorry.
but like even when you talk to professionals like this,
Yeah.
isn't there a really famous David Harvey
Yeah.
story of like there was, I don't think it was a self guru, but it was somebody who was in the government,
Yeah.
and he obviously had read like he's a massive he's a massive Das Kapital and like Karl Marx academic, and he was basically explaining the system, and he was doing his usual talk about the totality of the system and how you should fix it, and this expert was like, oh well, Mr. Harvey, what you're describing is like great, that's like great fixes, blah blah blah, where did you get all these ideas? And I think he would have expected some sort of like Ayn Rand, like theorist or anything like that, and then he turns around and is like, "Oh, from Karl Marx," and then this expert's face dropped.
Yeah.
But
look, I think it was worse than that. I think it was like a CEO or a CFO or something like that of like Goldman Sachs or some like massive financial institution in America. And like he's up there just like talking about like how to improve this issue that this capitalist system was having in America, right? And like he's analyzing it from a Marxist perspective, not quoting Marx though, not directly linking to it. And like, yeah, this CFO or whatever comes up to him at the end. It's like, these ideas are brilliant. How did you think of this kind of stuff? And he's just like, well, I just took it out of, Das Kapital Volume 1. And like, yeah, the CEO or whatever is just like, and like just backs out of the room slowly.
Yeah.
Like, we never had this conversation. I never said the work of Marx was genius. Yeah, but like it's like that. Like these help gurus have kind of figured it all out, man. Like they understand how the system works. But like so have socialists to an extent. They just use it. Like the focus is different, as you said before. It's just like, okay, you put this light on it, and they're gonna put this light on it, and like the two will never meet. But like I'm kind of trying to bridge the gap here and say like they're not so different. These people, they have the same kind of core value systems / core understandings of the workings of things. They just don't ever got to come together in terms of like their end goals and stuff like that. Again, it's just the individual application versus kind of the societal or the humanity-wide application of these lessons. But like they're the same paths to victory. It's just applied to different groupings. Like another thing that like the self-help gurus are talking about a lot is like kind of modeling success. It's just like you want to be successful, right? Like go find someone who's good at what you want to do and go ask them how they bloody did it, or like go ask them or go study someone that's successful. You want to be like a good basketballer, then like go figure out how Michael Jordan did it. Like what did he do? He woke up at like 5 o'clock every morning and shot hoops until like 10 o'clock at night. Then you do the same, and it's like a recipe, right? You follow the recipe and you will have the exact same results. You'll have this exact same success. Obviously there's personal variation and all that sort of stuff, but basically it boils down to kind of like a formula. And like if you follow these steps, you will achieve the same. It'll like have your own personal brand or touch to it, but like it's basically kind of assured. Like I said, like a recipe. If you sit down and try and make a cake with the same ingredients every time, you'll get the same cake, like kind of thing. And so like
is this basically like I forget exactly who says this quote, but isn't it basically the quote of you don't have to be good to get started, but you do have to get started to get good?
to be good or to be great.
To be great.
Yeah. And like, so you don't have to be, amazing. You just have to kind of follow kind of these set principles, especially in the area of expertise that you want to get good at or you want to be successful in. Do what the best people in your area do, and you will become the best. So that's like kind of the self-help kind of, one of the tenets of self-help right there. Right. And like this again is kind of core socialist thinking. Like socialists since the beginning have like wanted social change. They've wanted revolution of sorts, whether that be, this type of revolution or that, like violent upheaval or constitutional change or whatever. And so what they've done is they've modeled the revolutions and the social movements of the past. The the French were looking at the American Revolution and learning from what was going on in the American colonies, and they were like, "Oh, the Americans just did this," and Lafayette came back and he spread the word about what was happening over there, and then the French liberated themselves, and then the Russians, when they were going through, like Lenin was studying massively, and a lot of socialists had studied since then the French Revolution and how they got that off the ground, and they learned massive lessons from the French Revolution. Like much of Leninism is based on like kind of this understanding that they basically rolled the dice with the French Revolution. They tried to make it kind of pluralistic in a way and have like a lot of different interests and all that sort of stuff. So like there was a lot of infighting in the revolutionary movement, and people were struggling against each other and disagreeing with one another, and so it wasn't as organized as it could have been, and it went over this massive expanse of time, and then it fell into the reign of terror, and people were just killing one another and eliminating their rivals and all this sort of stuff. And Lenin was like, let's just cut this stuff out right away. We established the one party state kind of thing. You're either in the Bolshevik party and the Russian Democratic Workers' Party, or you're out kind of thing, because we're taking power because we want to have a vanguard and we want to have like proper control to prevent the disorganization of previous revolutionary movements, i.e. like kind of what happened in the French Revolution and stuff like that. And then you have like someone like Che Guevara, who was kind of a student of the Russian Revolution and then some other revolutions before that, and socialism, the ideals of Karl Marx, and he applied those lessons to the Cuban Revolution, like when Fidel was getting up there and trying to run a new country, or not a new country, but run the country after the fall of the Batista regime. Like he was kind of drawing upon a lot of Che's kind of socialist understanding on how a revolutionary society would work to try and lift Cuba up off the ground and get it going. So like socialists have always understood that you kind of model on the success of people who have done this stuff in the past and got a result, and you learn from that experience and you do it better. Socialists are students of history, and if to be a revolutionary is to be a student of revolution, then like to be someone who's in self-help is to be a student of the successful. Like again, it's like it's modeling success, and studying and learning from people who have done these things from like before. If you can't directly ask them the question, what did you do and what would you have done better, then you just learn about them as much as you can to kind of get the gold, like the value of all the lessons and all the knowledge you can extract out of them. And like again, like these things are uncanny. The connections are just so in your face when you draw them. It's kind of profound that you didn't, it's kind of surprising, sorry, that you didn't see them before. And like, and it jumps out at you, like massively jumps out of you, at you, sorry. And like another kind of core that they always talk about in self-help as well is kind of taking control, right? Like, it's your life. If you want to do something with your life, you've got to make choices now, and like take massive action, as like Tony Robbins would say. And so like it's all about like if you want to regain control over your life, you've got to start making decisions for yourself and do things that are going to benefit you. And like that is what socialism is all about. It's like, the famous line, seize the means of production. You want to take control. You don't want to just be a commodity anymore in a marketplace, just being sold and hired for your labor. Then take control of it. Band together with your workers and like, take over the workplace, or like band together to start like grassroots political organizations and change the system. Like, get involved in the democratic system, which you can do, kind of thing, and like advocate for change and make it happen. You want change in your life, self-help gurus say, then you got to make it happen. No one's going to hand it to you on a silver platter. No one is going to give it to you. And it's the same lessons socialists teach.
Yeah, and look, this may be a bit of a tangent, but I've always found it interesting when, say, for example, you make a political statement, like you were saying before, like, oh, we should seize the means of production within our workplace, or, we need to be more political in society. And the usual context that you encounter this is, say, for example, sport. And then you get the usual person that turns around to you and is like, oh, well, you shouldn't be political in sport, or, you should keep politics out of this. And I've always found it curious when somebody said that, because I kind of feel like any action you take is political. Even the action where you're saying, oh, you shouldn't have politics in X. That's political, because you don't want to make a statement when you're doing that, because any action we make in society is political.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, in a social setting, any act that you do is like kind of a statement, you would say. Like a good analogy of this is like how they advocate against, violence against women. They say that like if you are turning a blind eye to it, like you see something like that and you like, turn away and you don't try and stop it or address it or something like that, you're implicated. Because so like it's in the same vein, like what you're saying is if you choose not to make a statement, that's a statement.
Yeah.
Inaction is still an issue because like you're not doing anything about it. So by not addressing it, that is a political statement in itself. I'm a subscriber to that idea.
Well, I would take it further that inaction is an action.
Yeah, the inaction is a statement in itself. Yeah. And it holds weight, whether people consider it to be an action or not. Oh, yeah, I didn't do anything, I wasn't involved. But like by not being involved, that's an impact. That's a cause and effect kind of thing.
Well, that even goes back to I guess this is a tangent within a tangent, but the omission from something
Mm.
is so the classic one is oh well, I didn't lie to you, but if you omitted a few details of a statement, for example,
Yeah.
you are still lying.
Yeah. Well,
So
you just didn't tell the whole truth, did you? Before
yeah,
I asked. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. It's not a
But
lie. It just wasn't the whole truth.
yeah, but I guess back to what you were saying with what was a massive action, was it?
Yeah, massive action is what they say. Take massive action. And I think massive action is really allegory in the socialist sense for revolution. Like if you want to change your life, man, you want to have a better life, you want to have all these things, like then revolutionize your life. Like turn it on its head, do something new, do something that you've never done before. And that's what like a lot of self gurus like talk about. Like if you want to change kind of your circumstances, you have to change your life. So like, you know, if you get out of bed at 10 o'clock every morning, like then like if you want to change your life and be better, then you have to get out of bed at 6 o'clock every morning, like kind of thing, and start your day earlier so you can get more hours in your day and you can do more stuff. That in itself is a revolutionary kind of act, like changing like your life and reshaping the structure of your reality is kind of a revolutionary act on the individual level, just like a socialist would advocate for changing life and like revolutionizing your reality, but just doing that at a social superstructure kind of level. Like there's like you just implant this idea onto the other and it's the same kind of thing, but like you said, with a different focus. But like the thing that just like hits me the most with self-help, and especially like old mate Tony over here, is like the core kind of lesson in like all of this is like this significant acknowledgement of self-improvement. Okay, so everything pins on the person. Like if you want to have massive action, you want to kind of, you're modeling your success, you're kind of having, you're mastering your finances, all the things that we've talked about. This all boils down to self-improvement. That's what self-help is. But it's an understanding that like even in a capitalist society, when we know that like money is kind of just the thing that makes everything work, and it's like this the most important feature in our society because like it's the thing that defines all of our social relations, like how we relate to everyone in the world, it's all done through money. But if you want to do anything in self-help, it's all about self-improvement, it's about bettering yourself, right? And so if self-help and like the self-help gurus and all those people out there really at the core and at the most basic level are just about improving oneself, then that is an acknowledgement that you must invest in people. The only thing worth investing in is yourself, and yourself being a human is that like human, if you can, like, I hate this term, but like human capital is the most important thing out there. So humans are the most important thing. And so self-help is all about investing in people. Now, if you look at the definition of capitalism, which we talked before, which is like basically kind of this understanding of how society works by the circulation of capital, if you're sitting there advocating that the most important thing that anyone can do is invest in people, then that is the most profoundly anti-capitalist position in the world. That is a direct acknowledgement. Like they will sit there and tell you, like, you know, work on yourself, be a better person, and the rewards will follow. It's not about getting the money. It's not about having like the successful whatevers. It's not about accumulating all of this stuff. It's about you becoming a better person. It's about investing in yourself. It's about being a better person. That is a complete acknowledgement of the fact that the only way to develop in this world is to invest in people. And again, that is anti-capitalist. It's not about investing in money and investing in like investments as we would think of them in like the monetary sense, or like buying property or buying shares or anything like that. It's not about that. You have to become better and smarter and like, physically fit or whatever like that, so you can stand up and you can face the world. Now that is at the core of the anti-capitalist umbrella in which socialism falls under. It's an acknowledgement. Socialism is an acknowledgement that capitalism only focuses on money or capital. And so like everything else is thrown to the side. People are turned into commodities and are basically expendable. And like that has significant and profound impacts on our human psychology and our well-being. And like that has significant implications in the sense that it is absolutely damaging. It's soul destroying, and it's destroying the planet. And so if like society's focus is on money, but like self-help gurus are all about like, looking after or investing in people, then like socialism and self-help are basically one of the same from that angle. Like I said, they are deeply anti-capitalist because they don't believe in like investing in capital. They think about human betterment at the end of the day. And again, it's just the self-help gurus are just doing that on the personal level, and it's the socialists that are out there advocating for this on a societal level. They're doing it for the collective, not just the individual, which is much harder to do. And like it might be more, it's probably more rewarding because it's harder. But like it's just it boggles my mind that you have these people like self-help gurus that would spend all of this time investing in personal development and understanding all of these issues that we've talked about, all these core values that of like why these things are better, like better to get fulfillment and like investing in oneself so you can give back to the community and be a better person. But like they haven't made the next step and thought like, well, let's just transfer this to society. Let's improve society, not just yourself, and work within the system. Why not improve the whole goddamn thing for everyone? But I guess that's kind of where they split. Like
Yes.
it's just kind of like, I don't want to say it's selfish, like because like that is kind of it's not a fair evaluation, but like if the shoe fits, sometimes it is a selfish it's a selfish area. Even if the end goal is to try and do some good along the way, it's very self-centered compared to like a socialist way of thinking. But like the idea, once you see that everything that they focus on, self-help gurus and Tony Robbins, is about like developing people, that's anti-capitalist.
Hmm.
And it's like when you realize that, because like really when you think self-help, you think it's just like dirty sleazy capitalist stuff, right? It's just like, you want to make
Yeah.
money, man, you want to be better, you want to be rich and have like all these people love you and stuff like that, you got to do these things. But like really, is it?
Well, I guess that's kind of the reason why you go to his seminars, right? I think that might be where you're angling this is the impression you get from these self-help gurus is like, oh, how to make money quickly, how to get rich quick, and how to be successful. Like the emphasis is on, well, me, now,
Yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I think basically what you're getting onto is, well, here's the trick, or here's the secret to this,
Mm,
which is, well, you got to invest not only in yourself but also invest in others
mm,
in order to be fulfilled.
yeah.
But yeah, I would say coming into this and coming out of it, I would not have drawn so many parallels between Tony Robbins and socialists. I got to admit, I learnt quite a bit today.
Yeah, well, like it's a strange one, and like I said at the start, it's paradoxical. But like that's the sort of stuff that makes you really question reality when you're just like, oh my god, my brain can't take this kind of thing. Like, is this really happening? Yeah, it is,
Yeah.
because it's like it's contradictory. It doesn't make sense. But like, it's what they do. The self-help gurus are about people fundamentally, and like, you know
Mm.
what? That's what socialists are about too.
Mm.
People. Like every effort is about like kind of acknowledging that the system is focused on the wrong thing, and we need to claw back some humanity into our society before it's too late.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good sentiment to end on.
Mm.
And of course, the last thing we will do for today is what's that synthwave art? So I asked the AI to make a picture of enlightened Tony Robbins, and it gave us that.
He kind of it kind of looks like, I don't know, like kind of JFK / Tony Robbins. Like there's something else in there, but like he's got the whole 80s guy business power suit thing going on, and like, yeah, it's some classic synthwave art going on there. I think the two lend themselves too easily to each other, to be honest. Like that retro and synthwave art, and like the 80s business guy.
Honestly, I think all you need is the slogan "You can do it," and it's perfect.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, yeah, very
Okay.
good.
And with that, remember everyone to keep thinking and keep learning. And to sign us off, we'll give it to you, Mr. A.
Thank you very much, 4IS, and to all of you out there, please remember, I am, you are, we are a mystery.